Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Mates TV. So, Alexander Isak is finally a Liverpool player after the Reds agreed a British transfer record of £125 million for the Swedish striker. Oh yes. Funny, because there were definitely periods throughout the last 6 weeks, 2 months or whatever that's been going on for, where, yeah, we probably all thought this isn't going to happen. Even when Isak was taken to Instagram to vent his frustrations at conversations and words gone back on and all that kind of stuff. And you thought, well, in a normal world, that's the kind of thing that's the straw that breaks camel's backs. But no, it was the kind of thing that seemed like it only entrenched Newcastle's position even further, that they weren't going to sell him. They have subsequently obviously made moves of their own and got to a stage where they thought, okay, look, we've got a guy here who doesn't want to play for us anymore. We've got Voltemade in, and obviously they were hopeful of getting Wissett in as well. Just do it. It's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, and it is ultimately the right decision for Newcastle. And look, I'm not really qualified to say what's right and wrong for Newcastle in a truest of sense, in the deepest of senses. But one of the things I've said a few times throughout the summer, and written about throughout the summer as well, is theoretically, fundamentally, the signing of Alexander Isak shouldn't have been massively different from Liverpool signing Florian Wirtz, from Bayer Leverkusen, or even Bayern Munich signing Luis Diaz from Liverpool. Why? Well, because you've got a footballer there who's expressed their desire to move on. And then what you do is you go, okay, well, let's assess where we are. Let's decide if we can cope without that footballer. Let's decide if we've got a list of targets that we think are attainable. And does that move benefit Liverpool more than it benefits the player in question? And ultimately, the fee will be a huge central part of this. Diaz, great example, and again Wirtz as well. But Liverpool didn't kick up a huge fuss. They just said, "Look, we'll have him. We love him. He's great. We'll keep him. But if you can get to this fee, then let's talk." Wirtz had made it very, very clear to Leverkusen that he wanted to leave. They drove a hard bargain with Liverpool, and they reached a massive fee to make them happy, make the player happy, and make Liverpool happy. Alexander Isak should have been that, except that it looks like the way Newcastle are run through mismanagement and obviously horrendous and tough circumstances, through people moving on, and also illness and all that kind of stuff. They haven't had a one strong guiding hand on the wheel throughout the summer, and even I would guess beyond that. I can't speak more beyond that because I only know what I've kind of kept abreast with over this summer. But yeah, anyway, look, it is what it is. I think what's really interesting about Liverpool making this happen is that it was clearly Isak or nothing, and that is a very, very bold transfer stance to take for Richard Hughes in his first proper transfer window. Certainly his first proper summer one. He's not getting his feet under the table. He's had a season to assess what him and Slot need from his squad, and this was the one where he had to make moves. This is why I'm calling him Richard Big Moves Hughes, because my word, does Richard Hughes make big moves? Yes he does. Obviously with massive money to go so actively into the market so early on with Frimpong and Kerkez, etc. Great. To get some really good money in for players, sound. But to make, what we've seen is some of Liverpool's deals have been held up because of the chain. So quest for Mark Gahey delayed by Crystal Palace wanting to get other centre halves in. Cool, sound. Isak delayed by Newcastle just not being able to convince anyone to play for their football club throughout the summer. So yeah, delayed. But with regards to like Diaz and Darwin, he let them go. He left Liverpool short in order to effectively fund Isak, but also, maybe send a message of intent to Isak as well to some extent. But that took a huge game of brinksmanship, because Liverpool have been short, and maybe it's by luck or design, but Kazan and Gamoa stepping up in the breach there that perhaps wouldn't have happened if Isak had been secured earlier, or if we'd held on to Diaz or Darwin a little bit later in the window. Is it fortuitous, or who knows? It's worked out really well for him, and that's the only thing we can say with certainty. So yeah, cool. Just on the signing itself, I want to have a little talk about what it reminds me of. Virgil van Dijk. Not because, you know, one of them's a centre-half and one of them's a striker, but in terms of that idea of Isak or nothing. It was Van Dijk or nothing. Liverpool identified the best in class, worked out that they could afford to make it happen, knew that it was going to significantly improve not just the squad but the first team. Obviously looked around the market and assessed their options at what else could be done. Is there a canny move to be done? Is there a Moneyball signing to be made a la Salah to some extent, and Mane, obviously still pretty big money at the time for those footballers, but certainly ultimately grown to be much more, much bigger assets on the training ground and through performances on the pitch. They went and got Van Dijk because, yeah, he was best in class and they knew he was worth waiting for, and that's what they've done with Isak. And so, yes, the brinksmanship, absolutely, to leave Liverpool a little bit short, but to look around at what was available, and I'm sure the likes of Gyökeres will do better than he did at Anfield. He will. You know, he'll score some goals this season. And Sesko, I'm sure, will settle in at Manchester United. Delap will come back from injury and presumably score some goals for Chelsea. João Pedro looks a decent signing so far. The point I'm making, though, is look at the players who were on the market, look who was available, and Liverpool could reasonably have been in for any of those. They could, very tentatively link with Wissa, linked a little bit with Jean-Philippe Mateta as well. In my opinion, and I'm not just saying this now out of nowhere to suit a narrative now that Isak is all confirmed and done and dusted, I definitely said this earlier on in the summer, I feel like so many of those other guys who were on the market were just strikers. Good strikers, but not, not upper echelon, game-changing, again, not best in class, just best of what was available. And the other side to all of this, and I think this is one of the things when it comes to the fee, because the fee is huge, and it's not double what have been paid for those players. We're talking about in the region of 60 to 70 million pounds, a little bit more. I think Voltemade was a little bit more. The point is, that was the going market for those forwards, just to get a forward in. It is a significantly larger fee than them, but if that's what it is, that's kind of what it is. And that goes back to the Van Dijk thing. Liverpool could have made a number of different centre-half signings, probably for half as much as they paid for Van Dijk. But here we sit, is it 7.5 years later, coming up on eight years later? And no one can argue, well, people will because people are stupid, but you can't argue that he's been the best centre-half on the planet, at least at points during that, and I would argue still. He's captained Liverpool now to the title, he's won everything. He is the best centre-half on the planet and arguably the best of all time. Will Isak going to do that? Maybe, but this is what you're shopping for, is what I think on that one, and that's why it reminds me so much of the Virgil van Dijk deal. Anyway, look, let's talk a little bit more about the money. So yeah, look, as I touched upon, it's so significantly more than what's being paid elsewhere across the league, and Liverpool have done the same for Wirtz, but we're talking again about best in class. When you want to go and get the best that's available, it's going to cost you money. And the thing that's worth remembering about this, because I've mentioned it a few times before, and it'll be said elsewhere, and fans of other football clubs particularly, will be desperate to hammer home the money that Liverpool have spent. Two things: Liverpool have sold really well as well. Liverpool haven't spent excessively in recent windows, in the last two windows in particular, barely a sausage spent. But it was big money needed to be spent to secure the players that they wanted. And so Gyökeres was on the market, as we know. João Pedro was on the market, Delap's on the market, Sesko on the market, and a few others. Alexander Isak was not on the market. He was not on the market. And you know how we know he was not on the market? Because Luke Edwards basically hung himself out to dry throughout the entire summer because someone at Newcastle was telling him that and he took it as gospel. Newcastle were putting statements out, letting the world be known, Isak not for sale. So you couldn't go and get a bargain deal for Alexander Isak. He might not be worth 125 million. Now you make the point of people are worth what that you're willing to pay for them. You know, if you think something's got that particular value, then there's no need to haggle, is there? You know, Newcastle may be saying they wanted 150 for him and Liverpool getting less than his valuation, even though his valuation is bollocks, really, because you can just throw any number on anything if you really want to. But yeah, breaking the British transfer record kind of makes sense, but you had to, because Newcastle were not going to go, oh, what, Gyökeres is 70 and Sesko 70 and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, cool, 70, yeah, fine. I mean, they've paid more for Voltmada, you know, and they're paying, you know, in excess of £100 million to buy two strikers in. The market is weird and inflated, and they have played it really well to get that maximum value out of Isak. But yeah, that's where Liverpool have had to make that decision. They've had to make big boy decisions in this transfer market. Florian Wirtz was not available at 80 million. But they knew that he was going to be available. He wanted to play for us. There's the key. Both Alexander Isak and Wirtz wanted to play for Liverpool. And that is such a huge, significant step in buying a player, because they are two of the hottest, brightest talents in world football, and they want to play for your club. Now, can you make the deal happen? And Liverpool, for the first time in forever, actually had the financial clout to be able to go, you know what, yeah, we can do this, let's go and get it done. And yet it has been above and beyond what I think they would have liked to have paid, but it's telling that they've not balked at that price. And as Liverpool aren't balking at the price, it means they're comfortable with the price. And when I look at the fact that it's now Michael Edwards overseeing the operation, and then Richard Hughes and Arne Slot, who's earned the right to have more things for himself, given that he just won the title with another man's squad, yeah, I think it all kind of comes together, really. And ultimately, are you asked? I mean, maybe you're asked if you're the kind of person who's been really upset by Liverpool not having a huge net spend over the years. I've been pleased with Liverpool being competitive over the years. And I mean, like, really competitive, in that they'd have won loads more if there wasn't a financially doped football team finishing above them in the league most seasons. So yeah, I'm made up that we're doing this because it quells a lot of fears for people. It makes Liverpool look really good. It's fucking brilliant for business. With having all these big exciting transfers to talk about. God, I wish we could have done this every summer forever and ever and ever, because it makes my life and job so much easier. But yeah, anyway, they've done it. That's the fee. It's huge. Boss. It shows that Liverpool are eating big dinners at the top table. So who are we signing? Alexander Isak, obviously. No. In terms of a footballer, now I looked a little bit at heat maps and what have you, particularly for like the fullbacks and stuff earlier in the summer. I think I did a bit of this on the strikers, but it's worth revisiting, because obviously Isak hasn't kicked the ball for Newcastle so far this season, so we've got last season's data to go off, and what you can see is a forward who basically will play wherever he needs to play in the opposition half of the pitch. Really, really cool. It shows that you're getting a much more of a complete centre forward that will dovetail nicely with what Liverpool do, as opposed to a tip of the spear. Here's Hugo Ekitike's from last season. Looks kind of similar, right? Very, very cool. Speaking to the Liverpool going into the market, what I fear sometimes, and I've referenced this previously, when you get one brilliant centre forward, great, but what happened? They don't play 60 games a season. It's very rare that happens. Mo Salah's a freak. Luis Suarez was a freak. Most pick up injuries. How do you cover that without totally undermining what you're doing? Fernando Torres' understudy was David and Go. Functionally, yeah, I could kind of see, it wasn't miles off, but the level was so significant between the two of them that it was a real struggle for Liverpool to cope in his absence. And then you end up getting like a Robbie Keane, who stylistically was completely different, or Voronin, who just wasn't up to the class. So I can see a world, and people ask the question, and maybe we scoffed at the idea of Newcastle having Isak and Ekitike. Liverpool have got both of them. It's quite telling that it feels like you might have much more of a 60 minutes, 70 minutes, then another guy comes in. Maybe Ekitike can play a little bit more off the wing, or perhaps as a little bit of a 10 and spell Wirtz in that way as well. So we don't have to radically change what we're doing. That bodes well. Just one thing I'll point your attention to. Here's Erling Haaland's heat map from last season. It's there or there. You can see the difference. Now, obviously, I think Haaland and Isak are the two best strikers in the Premier League. They were the two best in class that are currently doing the game of football in England. As number nines, very, very different strikers. And obviously Haaland's numbers, his goals are just so much more raw and pure, but significantly you can see he's just in the box. That's where they worked him. I think that will be different this season. I think the Pep Lyder's influence is having him do a bit more, and it will be fascinating to see how that impacts Haaland's game, because he's loads less comfortable when you take him away from those sort of danger areas. You know, he picked up, did he concede the free kick the other week on the edge of the penalty area, sliding in, doing defensive dirty work that Erling Haaland has no business being involved in. So yeah, that's a thing for them. One thing that's significant between Isak and Ekitike compared to Haaland is you're looking at about 30-ish% more touches per match on average last season. Now again, in different sides, but Ekitike is already trending towards that for Liverpool this season. So yeah, again, speaks to a guy who's not just going to go and sit and go pass all the balls to me and let me score all the goals. He's going to actually play an active part in the full systemic play for the club as well. So very, very good indeed. So let's wrap up. To sort of summarise the Isak move for me, I think what Liverpool have done, I think they've safeguarded for the future, and I think this speaks to getting Isak and Wirt and Ekitike, and look, just in general across their transfer business. Now I'm going to do a video, I think the next video I'll do is really rating the transfer business, you know, putting the outs against the ins and just seeing how I feel it all stacks up. But what we've done, and I think the key mission for Liverpool this summer, once you've signed down Van Dijk and Salah's contracts, and particularly because Trent obviously expires and he moves on, it had to be twofold. Cool, you've signed them down to new contracts, great, because they're still the best at what they do, and they're good enough to have a brilliant impact on Liverpool's season this season, on the pitch and off it as well, but on the pitch almost most importantly. Clubs make this mistake where they go, the good times will last forever. So just keep the players, keep them playing, and it will just carry on forever and ever and ever. Liverpool got this wrong in 1990. So by the time they faced, I was chatting to some guys at the match at the weekend, and they were talking about seeing the Man United side come to Anfield with gigs in it all of a sudden. And Liverpool have still got Whelan and Molby and Rush and a Barnes who lost the yard of pace after injuries. And we brought in lads who weren't electric and weren't young and vibrant and exciting, and our young players hadn't quite crested at that point. Liverpool, just had hoped that it could go on forever. You know, Chicago Bulls, you're just hoping that Pippen and Jordan are just going to be the ones who continue to dominate and bring you championships. Sound, have them complete the handover over the next 12 months, but you've got to have someone to hand over to. What you don't want to do is promote from within too much, because there is a case, as I've mentioned on the crappening video from many moons ago, talking about how Barcelona undid themselves and how it looks like Man City are currently undoing themselves. When you have to promote players who didn't quite establish themselves as your nailed on starter, you are quietly undermining the quality of your first 11. So what you need to do is go out and buy brilliant, and Liverpool have gone out and bought brilliant, and it gives Liverpool the wonderfully strong situation where Salah in particular, they can make a very educated decision on Mohamed Salah's future next year. He'll have 1 year left on his contract. They'll have another season of football to look at from him in terms of his fitness and his overall output. And they can decide whether they want to keep him for that final year, whether they want to negotiate an extra one, or do they want to cash in. And if Liverpool had let him go this summer, they would have been in a situation where all of a sudden they didn't have their best player anymore. So you're dealing with that, but also you're telling world football that you've lost a player of that sort of calibre as well, and you're weakening your overall stance and your standing, and it makes transfer business loads harder to do. Whereas Liverpool have bought the next generation in. Will Wirtz and co ever live up to that mantle? Probably not, because Salah's going to be an absolute Premier League all-timer, but you've given yourself the best possible chance there because you've already brought in your stars. You don't need to, like, if Rio and Gamoa comes up and ends up being an absolute superstar, fucking brilliant. If that happens with the likes of, I don't know, Curtis Jones takes another big step up, or, you know, Kerkez or Frimpong or Bradley or Frimpong, to say his name correctly, or Bradley, then great. That's absolutely brilliant, but buying the best in class shortens the odds in your favour. It makes it far more likely that you can have stars there to transition into the next thing. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with how they've done things, because Liverpool, I thought Frimpong and Kerkez and even Mamadashvili all feel like traditional Liverpool signings. I think someone like Ryan Cherky would have been a very traditional Liverpool sign, and maybe even someone like Sesko. You know, that would have felt familiar to me. It's very unfamiliar what they've done, and I really like it. I really, really like it, because, swinging it back, peak Barcelona would have their superstars. So they would have, you know, Iniesta and Xavi, and then, you know, but prior to that, obviously they were in a handover period, but it would have been Ronaldinho. Before, it was Rivaldo to Ronaldinho, and then eventually Messi comes through, and Messi's the kid, and then Messi takes over as the star, and then obviously they get Neymar and Suarez. And what you should do is you should have a brilliant academy. You should be able to buy players in at a good value, you've still got loads of room for development, and make them better. But then when you need to, because you've been so smart and canny in how you buy and sell and promote and train, you can go into the market and buy brilliant when you need to, which is what they do. Barcelona did with Suarez. It's what they then, you know, they tried to do in iterations previously with Ibrahimovic and David Villa. Hopefully what we're seeing is that with Liverpool. I always felt it was the model, but you can never prove it because of obviously what happened to COVID and all the finances falling out of footy. Would we have been in the market for a big name player maybe 3 or 4 years ago? Perhaps. It doesn't matter now. It's done and dusted. We are living in this world, in this timeline, and the Reds look pretty damn healthy. 3 wins from 3, 9 points on the board, clear top of the Premier League table already, though it doesn't really matter because it's early doors, but I would rather be in this situation than anyone else's in the Premier League, and I think that's very, very important. So yes, the future is bright. It is. We've got a great contingent of lads who've been there and done it. We've got some incredibly talented young players in you know, Trey and Yoni and Rio and Gamoa, and a few others, you know, dotted around as well. We've bought players with loads of room still to improve, and we've bought some lads who should be good enough to have a real tangible impact this season for us and help, hopefully, Liverpool to, you know, secure a second league title and be even more competitive in the Champions League. Boss. So welcome Alexander Isak and everyone else, but mainly Alexander Isak because of the stress we've gone through to get him through the door. What do you think on Liverpool's business in the comment section underneath? How excited are you by Alexander Isak? Let me know. If you want more from me, I have got a Substack. So I've experimented with Patreon in the past, didn't really fit what I wanted to do. It is now the hub for everything we do here. There is a paid element though. Please don't feel any obligation to get involved with it. Just come over and subscribe for free. There'll be free Liverpool articles every month. There's going to be some more creative writing work going on there in the coming weeks and months as well, which I'm very, very excited about. And if you want to support the Mates TV project, then yeah, head to Mage Publishing Substack and you can subscribe for money or not. I'm cool either way, but thank you so much. I'll link it on screen and in the comment section underneath. But yeah, wow, what a summer for the mighty Reds. It's great being a Liverpool fan, isn't it?